Good morning, students. Today we are going to see the third unit, the first subtopic, concept of climate change adaptation. So, what is climate change adaptation? So, whatever the climate change, we need to go and adapt to that one? No, that is not correct. Okay, the adaptation in the sense reduce the vulnerability. Okay, because of the climate change. Climate change is one of the most pressing global challenges. Okay, because the low-lying countries may submerge if there is a what you call it, the warm the sun increase and the sun intensity increases. Okay, affecting the and also affecting the societies, ecosystems, and economics. So affecting societies in the sense the we are the societies. I mean the humans. The interaction. Okay, I mean the humans interaction. For example, is very hard. Okay, so what will happen? Obviously, we will get easily tensed up, right? So the societies, it also not only in terms of the human nature, it also affect the tendency of living. Okay, so that may also getting affected by the climate change, the ecosystems, because sometimes what will happen if it is very hard. Okay, the birds may migrate or the aquatic life okay may migrate. We all depend on one to the other. Okay, so the because of the climate change, this may get affected. That means the ecosystem and the economics. The people will, for example, the fishers are depending on that particular type of catching up that particular fish, and then they sell it for their normal day-to-day life. If the economy is depend on that, and because of the climate change, that particular the aquatic life has been moved from that location, it's very difficult for them to survive, right? So the climate change is not only affecting the society, it also affects the economy. We try to please try to understand the thing. So try to reduce the vulnerability of the climate change adaptation. So that is the meaning of that particular thing. Water resources are among the most vulnerable, being directly linked to the rainfall, glaciers, rivers, and oceans. Mostly humans mainly depend on water. We have actually the doctor asked us to drink 3 to 4 liters of water. Okay, not only for that. Okay, even for not only for human consumption. What I mean that for washing clothes. Okay, preparing food. We need to wash the vegetables and then washing the utensils and washing the garments. Okay, so everything we are depending on the water. So in the olden days, the people go and live in a very coastal area. I mean the coastal area or the bank of the rivers. The people, because they depend on day-to-day life for their day-to-day life, they depend on the water. Okay, so the water resources are more vulnerable because of the climate change adaptation. This lecture explains the concept of adaptation, types, barriers, strategies, and future research needs. Focus will be on water resources, agriculture, ecosystems, and human systems, both planned and autonomous adaptation. So the adaptation has been divided into two categories. One is planned adaptation, in another one is autonomous adaptation. That means um, we will take it in the I mean at the spot immediately we will take response to the change. Autonomous adaptation will be discussed with the few global examples. The climate change and water resources. Freshwater resources are highly sensitive to climate variability. Freshwater resources are highly sensitive to climate variability. So, for example, the people are not living in the coastal region, okay, or the near to the bank of river. So they depend on the fresh water. I mean rainwater. Just imagine, because if you go to the down south of Tamil Nadu, the like Ramanathapuram and things like that, they depend only solely mainly on the what you called river rainwater. They will store that rainwater. uh, for example, they used to call pond. They will store it in a artificial pond or something. Okay, so they will store it there and then they will try to use it at the for the throughout the year. Okay, so the freshwater resources are highly sensitive to climate variability. If there is a drought because of the climate variation, okay, then imagine how these people will survive. Okay, so observational data shows increased droughts, floods, and irregular rainfall. So, what the observation data? When because of the climate change, because of the increase in temperature, because of the industrialization, or because of the high increase in carbon footprint, or whatever the things which we have studied in Unit 1 and 2, El Nino effects and things like that, by natural means also. Okay, so the observation data clearly showed increased droughts, floods, as well as the irregular rainfall. We couldn't able to observe the climate. Okay, even the climate pattern is changing, not only the weather. So we know already what is the difference between weather and climate. The climate models project further stress on rivers, lakes, and groundwater. So, because of the change in the climate, it also stress upon the river flow, the lake water which is present in the lake, as well as the groundwater resources. These changes threaten water supply for drinking, farming, industry, and energy. As I told you, the main people have been looking, depend on the drinking water, farming. The water we need water for farming. Okay, then only you can cultivate crops like wheat or rice. Okay, and things like that. Or not only wheat or rice, even vegetables also. Okay, so the industry needs also water and the energy. Okay, the energy, for example, the hydropower. Okay, so they are generating electricity from the storing of water in the dam or uh, hydro means, but through water means. Okay, so just imagine. Okay, if this all will be affected. Okay, because of the change in the rainfall pattern or change in the climate. Okay, so the impacts extend to water quality, flood control, sediment transport, and ecosystem service. Understanding these vulnerabilities is key to designing adaptation policies. So we know already this is happening. So how to mitigate this one? How to reduce the vulnerability, that we need to think of. Okay. So coming to the hydrological cycle, impact on hydrological cycle, climate change alters rainfall intensity, duration, and timing. Increased evaporation reduces water availability in dry region. So, for example, if the sun intensity is very high, or we are even last week in September in Chennai, I mean the first week of September. What I mean is that we find it very hard. Okay, so it's not a summer period. Usually we used to say summer from March to June maximum. Okay, actually we are in September. We find it very hot, as well as the humidity is very low. Okay, so increased evaporation reduces water availability in the dry region. Snow melt pattern shift, affecting downstream water supply. Okay, so snow melt pattern shift. So, for example, during the in Arctic or Antarctic, you have a snow. Okay, when it melts, okay, obviously there will be a causes affecting downstream water supply. So, this shift, if there is no water, I mean, if snow supposed to melt and then comes as a water need to flow. Okay, if this pattern changes, obviously it affect the hydrological cycle. That's what they mean. Okay, the flood and drought become more frequent and severe. Hydropower, agriculture, and fisheries face major risk. Okay, so what they mean, because of the hydrological cycle, the hydropower, the power generated from water. Okay, hydropower, agriculture, and fisheries face major risk. River, because humans are depending on this all these activities. Okay, because human depends on the agriculture cultivation. Okay, and the fisheries we depend on the fish and things. Okay, I mean otherwise it will be getting affected. The economy of the human will be getting affected. Not only the economy, the lifestyle is also getting affected, and the human will be find it very difficult to adapt to this climate change. Okay, river basins may see reduced flow or complete drying in extreme cases. Hydrological uncertainty demands flexible water management systems. Social consequences of climate change. Climate impacts are uneven across regions and population. So, is very some region will be getting a more affected. Okay, you will have a flood. Some region there won't be any rainfall itself. Okay, will be affected with the drought. Okay, so this may happen because of the climate change. Climate impacts are uneven across region and population. Some areas face water scarcity, some flooding, as I told you just now. Rural farmers lose productivity due to erratic rains. So let's say you have a heavy rainfall. The people always, you might have seen in a lot of people, farmers have been having agitation. Okay, in the TV serial, in the TV news. Okay, the people have been climbing for more money for their crops because of the heavy rainfall. Because their goods has been affected with the flood. Okay, so this is very common. So erratic rains, rural farmers lose productivity. So obviously the productivity, the cost price will increase. So you might have seen actually 1.5 years before, the tomato price is almost 1 rupees or 120 rupees per kg. Now it's almost 30 rupees. Okay. So just imagine if the productivity is affected, okay, because of the rainfall and any other reason, obviously the cost will increase. The human could not able to afford. Obviously their pattern of taking the food is also changing. Okay, understood. So what I'm trying to say is that, okay, this need to be consistent. Okay, so the climate is nature. Okay, there is no doubt. But why the nature has been changing their pattern? Okay, that we need to understand. Okay, otherwise this is caused by natural means. Okay, well, we couldn't do anything, but it is causing by human made activities like anthropogenic activities. That means because of the industrialization or because of the human activities, this need to be reduced. Otherwise this pattern will change, that obviously affect the human life. The coastal communities face sea level rise and salinity intrusion. Very important point. Salinity intrusion. So when I was working in NERI, National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, as a project assistant, I've been asked to study the characteristics of water, underground water, very near to the coastal region. Okay, we have been asked, okay, the of different parts of Tamil Nadu, even in including Puducherry Union Territory. Okay, so when we have been asked to study, it was observed that the salinity has been of water has been increased because of the intrusion of seawater to the land. Okay, so obviously the people who have been residing very close to the coastal region, obviously they will get a saline water, okay, rather than a good water. I mean, it's a drinking water. Just imagine, this is happened because of the intrusion of saline water into from the coastal region to the land. This is why this is happening, because of the groundwater is getting reduced. Obviously, the flow, as per the mass transfer. Okay, what do you know? The in order to fill up the particular gap, the saline water is entered into that, and then it comes on the other side of the land. Okay, so this should be avoided. Am I correct? So the climate pattern should be by nature means is because it's not be affected by the things. So for that, what are the things we need to do in order to have a climate change adaptation? That's what this particular subtopic meant for. Hope I have given a broad idea. Okay, adaptation is a reduce the vulnerability. Okay, and also we need to mitigate the causes. Okay, because of the human made activities, and we need to go for a immediate solution, or by making a policy, and then we need to adapt the solution for this. Okay, that's what we the important part of this topic. The poor households are most vulnerable due to lack of resources. Indigenous knowledge helps in coping but is limited. Okay, so we should know actually what this particular pattern is. Okay, if you have been living in Western countries, okay, we know already this is always very cold. So, for example, if you go very northern part of Russia, the climate is normal climate itself is minus 50 degrees Celsius, minus 40 degrees Celsius. I mean, the very close to the Arctic, uh, what I'm talking about. Okay, the North Pole. So in that region is very common. The people, around 100 people are still living. So I've seen a video how these people leading the life. Okay, so they will keep on eating the water actually. Uh, I mean, even to drink. Otherwise, it will get freezed immediately. Okay, and also they will eat only the frozen, everything is frozen only. Okay, so the the lifestyle is entirely different. The people who have been living in a equatorial region or other part of country, if you have been asking them to go and live there, it's very difficult for them to survive. Even the cars which they have been using in that particular areas where the freezing point is less than the freezing point of water, around 40 degrees Celsius, they are not supposed to stop the vehicle. They need to keep on the vehicle for 24 bar 7. Otherwise, if they stop it, the engine freeze. Okay, so just imagine their lifestyle is entirely different actually, in fact. So this pattern, if it changes, it will all affect the whole earth, whole human. I mean, all the people who are been living on this earth. Okay, so adaptation is very important. That's why we have been studying this climate change adaptation. Poor households are most vulnerable due to lack of resources. Indigenous knowledge helps in coping but is limited. Adaptation requires inclusive policies addressing social inequality. Role of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in Climate and Water, IPCC. Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, provides scientific assessments on climate change impacts. His technical paper, Climate Change and Water, emphasizes water as a priority area. So it identifies risk for domestic use, food production, hydropower, and flood control, the same thing. This paper highlights the adaptation and mitigation response options. It guides policymakers, governments, and stakeholders with evidence. So, for example, if they say something that this is happening because of this human activities or something, we need a proof, right? So, what do they think? Policymakers? Policymakers will try to give a restriction. Okay, you should not do like this, so that it will affect the climate change. Okay, so that the people will be cautious. We will make them the people to be more cautious on this thing. It guides policymakers, governments, and stakeholders with evidence. Communication of findings ensures better informed decisions. Water security is central to sustainable climate strategies. So the role of IPCC in climate, okay, this paper talks about what are the things it guides us, the policymakers, governments, and stakeholders with evidence of data. What is adaptation? As I told you, adaptation is here to reduce the vulnerability to climate impact, can be anticipatory or reactive. Anticipatory, proactive. We will take a proactive steps, or reactive, immediate, post impact. After the impact, you just react. So the reaction will come once the incidents happen. Okay, so you can easily can remember. Can be a private or public. Okay, so individual or household may be affected, or the even the public or government driven. Okay, adaptation can be autonomous or planned. Okay, because of the planned policy based, we can be able to reduce this, bring to the climate, reduce vulnerability, or spontaneous, autonomous. Okay, spontaneous, immediate. Examples: raising river embankments, planting drought resistant crops. Okay, so the raising river embankments. So, for example, if you go to Puducherry, you would have seen actually they will put a stone near to the coastal area, I mean, bay of seashore, in order to avoid tsunami or in order to bring water enter into the land. Okay, so if you would have seen actually that will be constructing a land, I mean wall, long wall actually on the seashore in order to avoid the things, or they will plant bamboo trees in order to avoid the tsunami and things like that. Okay, rising river embankments. So that will help you to act accordingly. So okay, the flooding, to avoid the flooding because of the rivers. Planting drought resistant crops. Okay, so drought resistant crops has been planted. So these are the things we could be able to do, okay, in advance. These are proactive measures. Goal: safeguard human and natural system against risk. Success depends on available resources, governance, and social structures. Coming to here, the urban planning nature based solution for adaptation, increasing green cover, okay, increasing tree cover and green spaces to battle heat island effect. So, for example, it has been implemented in Toronto and Montreal, Canada, or significantly expanding tree coverage, improving the urban biodiversity and ecosystem connectivity. So Destin is building an urban gardening network to help with the district level regeneration effect. So this is all natural based solution for the adaptation. Okay, so that's what is the source has been taken from here, which has been cited here, unlocking the potential for transformative climate adaptation in cities. Washington DC, Global Commission on Adaptation and World Resources Institute. So the this picture has been taken from the particular source. Okay, so it's very self-explanatory. So you can also see the Chicago's green rooftop have helped to slow stormwater runoff by 36%. And also China's sponge cities pilot aim to capture, reuse, or absorb up to 80% of stormwater runoff in urban areas by 2030, increasing permeable surface and wetlands to increase the natural infiltration of rainfall and reduce the stormwater runoff. So coming to the adaptive capacity is nothing but ability to respond effectively to climate change determined by economic strength, technology, institution, and knowledge. So adaptive capacity, ability to respond effectively to the climate change. So how well you could be able to respond effectively to the climate change. So that is adaptation. Okay, if anything goes wrong, we need to adapt. Okay, to the situation. Adaptive capacity determined by economic strength. Okay, how good they are to face that consequences. Technology, institutions, and knowledge. What is the awareness they are have it? This awareness will come from where? From the data which has been collected. Okay, so the observation, then only this knowledge comes. Okay, the knowledge, indigenous knowledge, I mean indigenous indigenous knowledge on indigenous people will have that particular knowledge on their land. What is the geographical situation, how it looks like, I mean what is the climate pattern and things like that. So this knowledge is what they are talking about the climate change, and what are the actions that need to be taken, determined by economic strength, technology, institution, and knowledge, how they react to the situation. Okay, they have the knowledge what it means, how they are going to react to the situation. Countries with a strong governance adapt better. Communities with poverty, poor infrastructure, or weak institutions struggle. Education, awareness, and skill enhance resilience. Resilience means coming back to the initial position. Okay. International cooperation and funding increase the adaptive capacity in vulnerable nations. Some nations could not able to sustain because of this climate change, because they don't have economically strong. They may not have much technology to forecast the things, or even after the forecasting also, even they could not able to regain resilience, come back to the resilience. I mean, get back the resilience. I mean to say, they could not able to come back to the original position. Okay, so building adaptive capacity reduces long-term risk and damages. Autonomous adaptation occurs naturally without deliberate planning, triggered by changing condition rather than climate policies. Example, farmers adjust planting times to rainfall shift. Okay, let's say this particular crops has been cultivated in only with a low rainfall, or with more rainfall. Okay, let's imagine. Okay, if it is a very low rain is not what is not much necessary for that particular crops. Okay, if it is a summer, they will cultivate. Okay, the farmers adjust planting times to rainfall shift. So they know actually which period they need to cultivate what crops, what type of crops. Okay, so this is very important. So if they could not be able to understand this pattern, okay, is a on and off, they could not go for a rigid decision. Okay, what they need to plant, that is very very important. Common in agriculture and water management, provides short-term coping strategies but limited long-term impact. Sometimes result in maladaptation, unsustainable practices. Okay, unsustainable practices. Very important. Sustainable practices. We need to go for a sustainable practice. Best viewed as complementary to planned measures. Case studies in autonomous adaptation, Latin America, Africa, and agriculture, Africa. Uses of trans-basin diversion, efficient irrigation. So they have done efficient irrigation. Even in Japan, you could able to see dipwise irrigation. That means drop by drop they will pour the water and then make use of the water, wastage of water, and this even at the top of the air or under inside the ground. I mean inside the roof area. Okay, so it's not by natural mean. I mean it's nature only, but the thing is that is what you call, it's not by open space, or they may cultivate in a top roof of the building, or inside the building also they do, or they go for a deep irrigation. This is one thing of things. Use of trans-basin diversion, efficient irrigation. Okay, is an autonomous adaptation. Immediate, I mean spontaneous adaptation. Africa, local rainfall prediction methods, water harvesting in shovel. So water harvesting, sometimes there won't be any rainfall. The moisture will be high. From the air, they will try to restore the water. Okay, that means they will try to harvest the water. Okay, so they will the moisture will go and eat the nuts. Okay, knit of the, they will have a knit. Okay, not a knit. What I mean is the knit. It will go and eat, and then from there they will harvest the water. Agriculture, adjusting crop choices and irrigation schedules. Simulation studies shows moderate benefits under mild warming. Under high warming, autonomous measures may worsen water stress. So if it is very warm, autonomous measures may worsen water stress. Risk includes soil degradation, biodiversity loss, and yield reduction. Soil degradation, soil may degrade, biodiversity loss, and yield reduction. Therefore, you won't get a much yield. Obviously, the cultivation is not efficient. The lessons, autonomous strategies help, but not are not enough. So what the lessons we thought I learned from here is that autonomous strategies may help, but not good enough to retain back. So we have seen actually the two cases we could be able to bring the adaptation. Okay, can be autonomous or planned. The adaptation you can bring it from a autonomous or a planned policy based things. So that's what the adaptation by autonomous is not enough. That's what the case studies shows. Planned adaptation involves deliberate policy action guided by scientific assessment and long-term planning. Government integrate climate risk into infrastructure design. Example, flood defense system, water recycling project. Stronger than autonomous adaptation due to systematic approach. So planned adaptation is a systematic approach. Requires financial investment, government support and monitoring. Long-term effectiveness make it essential for resilience. So when you go for a planning and then by policy making and you want to do the climate restoration, okay, is well and good. It's better than the autonomous adaptation, planned adaptation, but it's supposed to be continuous, long-term effective. It's supposed to be long-term effective. That is the point they say. Planned adaptation has been carried out in different countries like Netherlands, Australia, and New Zealand, Bangladesh, Europe, UK, Germany, Latin America. So in Netherlands, advanced dikes, storm surge barriers, flood forecasting has been planned. Australia, desalination, removal of water from the saline water, recycling, drought management, they have done. And plan adaptation is globally expanding at risk intensify, as risk intensify. Okay, so just go and read this part. I don't want to dump a lot of information on one small subtopic. Okay, so I quickly go through it hereafter. Hope you get an idea what is adaptation. Okay, reduce vulnerability. Okay, what is autonomous adaptation as well as planned adaptation. What how the policy making need to be done. So which one is better? Okay, this is all we have seen so far. Even with strong mitigation, some warming is inevitable. Short-term adaptation protects against immediate changes. Long-term adaptation prepares societies for future risk. Without adaptation, losses from floods, droughts, and storms increase, help sustain agriculture, energy, and ecosystem service, support human development and disaster risk reduction, complement sustainable development goals. Adaptation and mitigation both are different. Mitigation is reduce the greenhouse gas emission. Okay, and mitigation is try to reduce the concentration of the pollutant or concentration of the things. So try to reduce the things. Adaptation reduce the vulnerability of the impact. Okay, so both are needed for climate resilience. Early mitigation lowers the long-term adaptation cost. Adaptation addresses unavoidable impact already occurring. Together, they minimize the risk and damages. Policies must integrate both approaches and simultaneously. Historical approach to adaptation. Societies have long managed climate risk. Traditional methods, irrigation systems, crop diversification, water storage, ancient flood control measures still influence today's practices. Indigenous knowledge provides valuable lessons. However, modern climate change is faster and more intense, requires advanced technology and planning. Blending traditional wisdom with modern science strength adaptation. Okay, traditional wisdom. That means you should have a knowledge and you need to along with go for the modern science. That will strengthen the adaptation. Very important point. Not only the historical knowledge will help you to do the things, but also you need to go with the hands on the current modern technology, okay, which is available. That will help you to strengthen the adaptation. Factors influencing the adaptive capacity, economic resources, richer nation adapt better. Okay, so as I told you, you should have a technology, you should have a economy, you should have a indigenous knowledge, and you have historical knowledge about that particular space. This all help you to resilience back the climate change. Resilience back come to the climate. I'm resilience uh, that means they regain the climate change, climate position. Institutional strength, effective governance aids adaptation, access to technology, crucial for monitoring and forecasting, education and awareness, build resilience in communities, resource distribution, equitable system, reduce vulnerability, social network and cooperation strengthen responses, international aid enhances capacity in weaker nations. Vulnerability and development. Vulnerability is exposure plus sensitivity plus low adaptive capacity. So when you have a low adaptive capacity and very sensitivity and exposure, okay, it leads to the vulnerability. So ultimate aim is to reduce the vulnerability. Okay, poor development path increases vulnerability. Urban sprawl, deforestation, weak planning worsen risk. Sustainable development reduces long-term exposure. Poverty, food insecurity, and conflict amplify climate risk. Vulnerable groups, poor, elderly, indigenous, women, sick, or vulnerable groups. Equitable development is central to resilience building. So, barriers to adaptation. What are the barriers to bring back to the adaptation? Lack of financial resources, weak or fragmented government limit, okay, and government planning, policy making, technical challenges, lack of resilience climate data, cultural resistance to change, slow adaptation. Okay, so slow adoption. Okay, adoption is different. Okay, adoption. Poor institutional coordinates across sectors, unclear responsibility between government agencies, overcoming barriers requires integrated multi-level governance. So coming to the limit to adaptation, physical, ecological, economic, political, social, cultural, institutional, and informational. Adaptation cannot address all impacts alone. Combined strategies with mitigation are essential. Adaptive management focus on flexible, robust strategies under uncertainty, moves away from rigid infrastructure only solutions. Example, water efficient technologies, resilient full flood management. Okay, how do you going to do the flood management? That is very very important. So I can say actually the government of Tamil Nadu have take necessary steps during the one particular government has taken an initiation of rainwater harvesting. So during the flood management, during sometimes it will heavily rainfall because the drainage has been also flooded. Okay, so if we have a rainwater harvesting, it will try to store that particular water and try to reduce the amount of flood. Okay, so the rainwater harvesting is one of the management of flood. What I mean is that okay, so the resilient flood management and water efficient technologies or adaptive management, okay, or examples for adaptive management. Allowing rivers to flood temporarily reduces long-term risk. Okay, incorporate monitoring, feedback, and continuous learning. Reduce exposure while protecting ecosystem. Support sustainable water management under changing climate. Scenario based approach uses multiple climate projections for planning, helps prepare for diverse aerological outcomes, reduce reliance on a single forecast, identifies best and worst case features, useful for risk based decision making, challenges, large differences between scenarios, still essential for long term water planning. Adaptation for agriculture. Agriculture is highly vulnerable to rainfall shift because these are one of the things humans are very totally dependent on agriculture. Okay, the strategies efficient irrigation, drought resistant crops need to be cultivated, biotechnology, pest salinity, and stress tolerant variants. Salinity. There is a one video I have seen recently in social media. The China has come out with cultivate the crops but saline water. Okay, they have gone for that particular technology. That means usually the saline water is not used in order to cultivate the crops, even for wheat or crops or rice or something. Okay, so the saline water they've used in order to cultivate the crops. Okay, so it's a novel technology. Okay, so when that would be the case, we don't depend on the purely on the fresh waters. Okay, agriculture. So almost this problem will solve a majority of water scarcity problem. Okay, understood. So this type of technology, the government need to initiate, and lot of fund need to be allotted in order to do this type of research. Okay, the policy rewarding efficiency improves resilience, crop diversification reduces risk exposure, R&D investments are vital, are very important for future food security, ensure sustainability yields under climate vulnerability. Cross-sectional cross-sectional adaptation, forestry ecosystem, forests regulate climate, water, and biodiversity. Adaptation, changing species mix, adjusting rotating cycles, stronger fire management to prevent losses. Ecosystem-based adaptation includes protecting wetlands. Conservation policies must include water needs. Protecting biodiversity enhances resilience. Okay, so hope you would have seen actually what is adaptation, how to overcome, how to come to the resilience of climate change. Okay, so these are all things which we have seen in thing. Okay, what is gaps in knowledge and research? Models often fail to capture local water cycle, limited data on groundwater, water quality and ecosystems, fewer studies on socio-economic dimension of adaptation, cost benefit analysis of adaptation measures lacking, weak legal and institutional frameworks for water, need problematic risk tools for decision making, long-term field studies in vulnerable regions required. Conclusion and take you need to take away: the adaptation is essential for managing unavailable impact. Water resources are central to adaptation strategies. So water is very much very linked to the human. Okay, water resources is very important because of the climate change. Okay, the mist hydrological cycle will change. Okay, how to overcome these difficulties either by taking action of autonomous or by planning. That's why the adaptation comes into picture. The adaptation is to reduce the vulnerability and along with the mitigation. That is a very, very important point. In different situations, because of the climate change, different countries have adapted different strategies, overcome their issues. Okay, and we have seen some of the examples, and in the some the figure one, which the source which we have taken and shown to you in China, the people have been how to forecast, how to take they have taken the action when there was a flooding. Okay, how they improve the using a sponge technology, how they absorb the water and then they reuse the things whenever is necessary. Okay, so these are the things you need to understand the things. The observation data is very, very important to predict the things. The knowledge is very important. The technology is different, very important to go for adaptation, and as well as the economic power will have a most important factor need to be considered. Future research must close knowledge gaps and inform better policies. So, with this note, I stop my lecture. We will see in next class with the second subtopic of Unit 3. Thank you. Good morning, students. Today we are going to see the third unit, the first subtopic, concept of. Good morning, students. Today we are going to see the third unit, the first subtopic, concept. Good morning, students. Today, good morning, students. Today we are going to see the third unit, the first subtopic.